ever noticed that if you put boiled potatoes into a blender or like a food processor, you don't get a smoother puree?
Oh, no, you definitely do not.
Right. You end up creating this batch of like literal industrial grade wallpaper glue.
Yeah, it's terrible.
We are talking about a super sticky, totally elastic, completely inedible paste. It practically bonds to the roof of your mouth.
It really does. It's just a nightmare.
So today, for this deep dive, we are looking at the violent microscopic physics of the kitchen.
Which sounds intense, but it's so important.
Exactly. We're getting into why trying to use a machine to do a chef's job is, well, it's not only a culinary sin, but it's the fastest possible way to fail a professional cooking exam.
I mean, it is a perfect microcosm of what goes wrong when we prioritize specialized gadgets over, fundamental understanding.
Yeah, people just assume a blender is like a really fast, highly efficient potato masher.
Right, because it spins, it chops, it smooths things out. But when you look at the actual cellular structure of a tuber, it's a completely different story.
Wait, so what is the blender actually doing?
Well, using a high-speed spinning blade is roughly equivalent to using a chainsaw to prune a bonsai tree.
Oh, wow. A chainsaw.
Yeah, you aren't just processing the ingredient. You are fundamentally destroying its molecular integrity.
And that destruction is exactly what we are dissecting today. We're taking you on a journey that starts with a super relatable home kitchen panic.
The classic missing potato masher scenario.
Exactly. You realize you don't have a potato masher right when you need one. And we're going to scale that all the way up to surviving one of the most rigorous professional culinary certifications out there.
Right, the TESDA Cookery NC2's assessment.
We are diving deep into the manuals, the guides, and the actual physiological realities of food. We really want to show you that true culinary mastery has absolutely nothing to do with what tools you own.
Or, your ability to just memorize a giant textbook of recipes.
Right. It's about something much deeper.
It is entirely about systems. It's about understanding thermodynamics, cellular biology, and spatial organization.
Which sounds like a science class, but it's really just cooking.
Exactly. The mindset required to pivot successfully when you lack a simple wire potato masher is the exact same mindset required to impress a strict culinary assessor.
Yeah, the kind staring you down with a clipboard.
Yeah, those guys. You have to abandon brute force and rote memorization, and instead you have to rely on technique.
Let's start right there at the stove. Imagine you've got a pot of boiled potatoes. They are perfectly cooked. They are drained. The steam is rising.
Perfect scenario.
And then you reach into the drawer, and the zigzag wire masher is missing. The immediate instinct is to panic.
Oh, total panic. Everyone freezes.
But looking at the actual mechanics of that tool, missing it might actually be the best thing that could happen to your dish.
It's totally a blessing in disguise. The standard zigzag wire masher is, it's actually an incredibly flawed piece of engineering if your goal is a truly smooth puree.
Really? But it's literally called a potato masher.
I know, but think about the geometry of it. You have these thick wires bent into a wave pattern, right?
Yeah, with those massive gaps between them.
Exactly. So when you press that down into a solid object like a potato, the wire crushes some of the material. But a significant portion simply squishes up through those gaps, completely unbothered.
Oh, I see. So it kind of just pushes the chunks around the pot.
Exactly. You are guaranteed to leave hard lumps behind unless you mash the mixture repeatedly for like an extended period.
And as we'll get into with the cellular chemistry, repeated, prolonged mashing is pretty much the enemy of a good potato.
It absolutely is.
And in fine dining or in an assessment environment, a lumpy mash is an automatic failure.
Oh, immediate failure. It just shows a total lack of control.
So lacking that wire tool instantly forces you to look at the physics of what you are actually trying to accomplish.
Right, you're trying to break down starch cells without rupturing them.
And the manuals we're looking at outline 3 distinct, highly effective manual methods to achieve this, starting with what they call the fork and deep bowl technique.
Which I know sounds incredibly primitive, but it's actually deeply rooted in mechanical efficiency.
So how does a regular dinner fork do a better job?
Well, the most critical element here isn't the fork itself, it is the environment. You must use a deep, wide bowl.
So not a flat plate, not a shallow dish.
Right, because we are dealing with kinetic energy and downward force. If you apply heavy downward crushing force to a round boiled potato on a shallow surface, what happens?
It's going to shoot across the room.
Exactly. It acts like a projectile. It will slip, shoot off the edge, and land on the floor.
Which is another automatic failure.
Yeah, definitely. So a deep, wide bowl contains that kinetic energy. It provides these steep, curved walls that naturally corral the ingredient back toward the center where you're working.
It creates a closed system.
Precisely.
Okay, so you dump the fully drained potatoes into this deep bowl, and there's an absolute non-negotiable condition for this to work, right?
Oh, yeah. You have to execute this while the potatoes are screaming hot.
You cannot just let them sit around and cool off on the counter while you prep something else.
Absolutely not. The temperature factor is purely a matter of starch chemistry. When potatoes are boiled, the starch granules inside the cells absorb water, they swell up, and they gelatinize.
Okay, so they get soft.
Very soft. In this hot, swollen state, they are incredibly pliable and yielding. They offer almost zero physical resistance.
But what happens if they cool down?
The moment the potato begins to cool, this process called retrogradation sets in. The gelatinized starches start to realign and crystallize.
Oh, so they firm back up.
Exactly, they get hard. If you try to crush a cold or even lukewarm potato, it doesn't yield smoothly at all. It just shatters into these firm, distinct little pebbles.
So you're just making potato gravel.
Pretty much. You will never, ever be able to smooth out a retrograded potato, no matter how much force you apply.
Wow. So while they are practically still steaming, you take a heavy dinner fork, hold it flat, and press down firmly using the back of the prongs to crush the large chunks.
Right, but you don't stick with the fork for the whole process.
So fork is basically just the demolition phase, right?
Yes. Once the major structural chunks are broken down, you have to swap to a metal spoon or a heavy wooden spoon.
Why not just keep using the fork?
The fork fails in the secondary phase because of its tines. A fork is designed to pierce and let material pass through it.
Oh, right, like the gaps in the wire masher.
Exactly. To build that final fluffy texture, you need surface area to agitate the starches and incorporate your fat and liquid. The convex back of a heavy spoon provides that broad, solid surface area.
So you switch to beating the mixture vigorously in a circular motion, streaming in your warm butter and cream.
Yeah, the aggressive circular beating incorporates air, which fluffs the potato.
But here is where we kind of hit a ceiling with this method, right?
We do. That method is rustic. It's, great for a Tuesday night dinner.
But if you want to elevate this to restaurant quality, the kind of velvety, completely frictionless texture that proves to an assessor you have absolute command over the ingredient.
Then you have to move to the sieve method.
The sieve method. This is how you achieve that Michelin star texture.
Yes, and it relies on extrusion rather than crushing. You use a standard fine mesh metal strainer or a tamise, which is essentially just a drum sieve.
The setup here is really crucial. You place the sturdy metal strainer directly over a large clean mixing bowl.
Right.
You drop a few hot potato chunks into the strainer. Then, using the back of a large metal ladle, or maybe a stiff silicone spatula, you aggressively scrape and press the potatoes directly through the microscopic mesh holes into the bowl below.
Let's visualize the mechanics of extrusion versus mashing for a second.
Okay.
Mashing is basically a game of chance. You are blindly plunging a tool into a massive potato, hoping that you eventually hit every single lump.
Which you usually don't.
Right. But extrusion is an absolute physical guarantee. You are forcing the matter through a rigid steel grid.
So the lumps literally can't get through.
It is physically impossible for a lump larger than the microscopic opening of the mesh to pass through. You are completely standardizing the particle size of the potato in one single motion.
That's brilliant. And when you are done pressing the matter through, the technique isn't quite finished yet, is it?
No, you have to lift the strainer and flip it over.
Because clinging to the underside of that metal mesh is this dense, beautiful, ribbon-like potato fluff.
Yes, and you have to scrape that off with your spatula into the bowl. That material on the underside is the purest form of the processed starch.
And because this mesh technique has completely mechanically eradicated every single lump, your handling of the potato in the next step changes entirely, doesn't it?
Completely. With the fork method, remember we were beating vigorously to smooth things out.
Right.
But with the sieve method, the manuals specifically mandate that you switch to gentle folding. You gently stir in the warm butter and milk.
Why the sudden shift to being gentle?
It brings us back to the fragility of the starch cell. The sieve has already done all the mechanical work of achieving a smooth texture.
So if you beat it now, you're just doing damage.
Exactly. If you were to take that perfectly smooth sieved potato and start beating it vigorously with the spoon, you would be over-agitating it. You're introducing unnecessary friction.
And friction is bad here.
Very bad. The more friction you apply, the more you risk tearing the actual cell walls of the potato. Gentle folding simply hydrates the already smooth mixture with the dairy without provoking the starches into that gummy state.
Okay, so there's actually a third method outlined in the deep dive sources for when time is the absolute most critical factor.
Which happens constantly in a high-pressure kitchen or during an exam.
Right, the box grater method.
This one relies on a completely different thermal approach.
Yeah, because with the fork and the sieve, we emphasize that the potato must be screaming hot.
But with the grater, you actually have to let the drained potatoes cool just enough so you can handle them without burning your palms. Or, you grip them with a folded, clean kitchen towel.
So you take those slightly cooled chunks and you literally just rub them down the fine or medium holes of a standard box grater.
Yes. And what falls into the bowl isn't mush at all. It's a pile of fluffy, perfectly uniform, distinct potato strands.
It's kind of a brilliant workaround, honestly.
It really is, because it exploits surface area multiplication.
Surface area multiplication.
Yeah, so a solid chunk of potato takes a really long time to absorb butter and cream. But when you shred it into hundreds of thin, uniform strands, you are exposing a massive amount of surface area.
So when you pour your hot dairy, the heated milk and melted butter over those cool strands, the thermal shock causes them to almost instantly dissolve into a smooth mash.
Exactly, you barely have to stir it. The heat of the liquid melts the fine strands simultaneously.
Wow.
You achieve hydration and homogenization with almost zero mechanical mixing. It is incredibly efficient.
Okay, hold on though, I have to ask.
Yeah.
If the ultimate goal of all of this, whether it's sieving or grating, is a perfectly smooth texture, and we are trying to save time and effort,
Yeah. Why in the world wouldn't we just use a blender? I mean, we have motors that spin at 20,000 revolutions per minute. Why are we manually pushing potatoes through a metal screen when we have technology that can pulverize anything in 5 seconds?
because pulverizing is exactly what you do not want to do. The manuals issue a massive, unavoidable warning against this.
Like a critical warning.
Yes, using a motorized blade on a boiled potato is the ultimate example of misapplying a tool because you just don't understand the chemistry of the ingredient.
And the result is that sticky, elastic wallpaper paste we talked about in the very beginning.
The literal glue. Yeah.
But what is actually happening on a microscopic level in that blender pitcher to cause such a horrific transformation?
Well, we have to look at the architecture of the potato cell.
Mm-hmm.
Think of a raw potato as millions of microscopic, rigid boxes made of cellulose.
Okay, little cellulose boxes.
And inside each of those boxes are granules of starch, specifically amylose and amylopectin.
When we boil the potato, the heat and water cause those starch granules to swell up like little water balloons, and the rigid cellulose boxes around them soften and weaken.
So they are incredibly delicate at this cooked stage.
Very delicate. When you use manual methods, a fork, a sieve, or a grater hat, you are applying blunt pressure.
Blunt pressure.
Yes, that blunt pressure gently separates the cells from one another along their natural biological fault lines.
Oh, I see. So you are pulling the microscopic boxes apart without actually breaking them open.
Exactly. The starch balloons remain safely contained inside their softened cell walls.
But a blender blade isn't blunt pressure.
Not at all.
It is a razor-sharp piece of steel spinning at a terrifying velocity.
Right. The blade acts like a violent microscopic whip. It doesn't separate the cells, it slices indiscriminately right through them.
Oh, man.
It violently ruptures millions of cell walls simultaneously, and when those walls are breached, all of those swollen starch granules just spill out into the surrounding liquid.
So the amylose and amylopectin are suddenly unleashed into the wild.
Yes, and amylose is a long, linear polymer. When a massive amount of it is suddenly dumped into an aqueous environment, those long molecules immediately start tangling up.
Like a bunch of microscopic tangled cords.
Exactly. They cross-link with each other and form a massive, continuous polymeric matrix.
Which means?
You are quite literally creating a non-Newtonian fluid. You are manufacturing glue. It goes from a fluffy vegetable side dish to an elastic polymer in about 3 seconds of blending.
That is a staggering realization.
Yeah.
The tool completely dictates the chemistry.
It really does.
And this physics lesson about violently broken starch cells maps perfectly onto the psychology of navigating a professional kitchen.
It really does.